On the night of March 9, 1945, Tokyo lay beneath a thin veil of clouds. The wind was dry, the air cold, and the city, though weary from years of war, seemed at peace for the moment. Mothers tucked their children into futons. Factory workers returned from night shifts that kept Japan's war effort alive. Few noticed the low rumble in the distance, a sound that began as a faint vibration and grew into the deep, rolling thunder of hundreds of engines approaching from the Pacific. Those who heard it had no idea that this would be the last night their city would ever look the same. At air bases thousands of kilometers away in the Mariana Islands, the mission had begun hours earlier. Under the moonlight, more than 300 B-29 Superfortress bombers took off one after another, their massive propellers cutting through the humid air. Each aircraft carried tons of incendiary bombs, weapons designed not to explode but to burn. The crews had been briefed. Their target was the heart of Tokyo. The city's wooden houses, narrow alleys, and crowded neighborhoods would make it the perfect fuel for fire. The operation had a name, Meeting House. It would soon become synonymous with destruction. General Curtis LeMay, the architect of the raid, had changed American bombing tactics. High-altitude precision strikes had failed to cripple Japan's war industry. Now LeMay ordered his bombers to fly lower, around 5,000 to 7,000 feet, to drop their payloads more accurately. The goal was simple and brutal, to set the entire city ablaze. In the war rooms, it was discussed as strategy. For the men, women, and children of Tokyo, it would be an inferno. Shortly after midnight, the first bombers crossed the Japanese coastline. Anti-aircraft guns opened fire sporadically, their shells bursting far below the American planes. Japan's air defenses had been stretched thin. Fuel shortages and earlier losses meant that only a handful of fighters could be scrambled. The American pilots flew, almost unopposed. As they reached the capital, the lead aircraft dropped colored flares to mark the target zone. People on the ground, staring upward, saw the strange lights drifting through the sky and wondered what they meant. Then the first wave of firebombs fell. In seconds, the quiet night erupted into chaos. Thousands of M69 bombs, small cylinders filled with jellied gasoline, fell like rain. Each one burst open, splattering burning napalm in every direction. Wooden rooftops ignited instantly. Sparks leapt from house to house. Within minutes, the fires joined into roaring walls of flame that raced through the neighborhoods of Shitamachi and Honjo. The sound was deafening, the crackle of fire, the whistle of bombs, the endless drone of engines overhead. People ran into the streets, clutching their children, covering their heads with blankets, screaming for their loved ones. The heat was unbearable, the smoke suffocating. The wind began to rise, feeding the flames until the city itself became a furnace. Eyewitnesses would later recall that the air seemed alive, shimmering with heat, filled with glowing embers. Tornadoes of fire twisted through the streets. The storm sucked up oxygen, pulling everything toward its center. Roofs were torn away, people thrown to the ground. Many tried to escape to the rivers, believing that water would protect them, but when they reached the Sumida River, they found it boiling. Bridges collapsed under the weight of fleeing crowds. Those who jumped in were swept away by fire and debris. Families were torn apart in seconds. Entire districts, miles of homes, shops, and temples, vanished in flame. Inside the city, firefighters fought bravely but hopelessly. Their pumps ran dry, their hoses melted in the heat. Air raid shelters became death traps, filling with smoke and heat until no one inside could breathe. Survivors later described the sky as red as blood, the air filled with the smell of burning wood and flesh. The firestorm created its own wind, reaching hurricane strength, pulling in air at such speed that even people who tried to crawl along the ground were dragged toward the flames. Mothers shielded their infants with their bodies. Soldiers tried to maintain order, guiding civilians toward open fields, but there were too many and nowhere to go. By 2 a.m., Tokyo had become a single living fire. Above the inferno, American airmen could feel the turbulence shaking their bombers. The glow of the burning city was visible for nearly 150 miles. Some pilots looked down in silence, others turned away. One later wrote, "We could smell the smoke even at our altitude. It was as if the earth itself was burning." The raid continued for 3 hours. When the final wave of planes turned for home, the city below had been transformed into a sea of flames stretching as far as the eye could see. By dawn, the fire had consumed 16 square miles of Tokyo. When the sun rose, its light revealed a city of ashes. The once crowded neighborhoods were gone, only the black outlines of foundations remained. Steel beams twisted like ribbons. Trams, cars, and bicycles lay melted in the streets. In the rivers, thousands of bodies floated silently, burned beyond recognition. Over 80,000 people were dead. Some estimates would later put the number above 100,000. 1 million were homeless. Hospitals overflowed with the wounded, people with burns so severe that even doctors could do little but ease their pain. Many died within days. The Japanese government was paralyzed by the scale of the catastrophe. Communication lines had been destroyed, and even the military struggled to grasp the full extent of the damage. When the first reports reached Emperor Hirohito, he was said to be deeply shaken. For the people of Tokyo, the realization was devastating. The capital of the empire, the symbol of national pride and unity, had been obliterated in a single night. Air raid sirens would never again sound the same. From that point on, the war felt unwinnable. In the following weeks, the U.S. repeated the tactic on other cities, Nagoya, Kobe, Osaka, and dozens more. Each attack left behind burned ruins and broken survivors. Japan's cities were largely built of wood, and in just a few months, much of the nation's urban landscape was gone. The country was being burned to the ground from the sky. Yet the government continued to fight, determined to resist surrender. Civilians dug fire breaks, built shelters, and trained to defend against invasion, even as food grew scarce and hope vanished. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, the success of Operation Meeting House was hailed as a turning point. U.S. commanders argued that the raids were shortening the war and saving American lives. General LeMay famously said, "If we lose, we'll be tried as war criminals." He knew the horror of what he had unleashed, but he believed it was necessary. The moral line between strategy and cruelty had blurred completely. The war had become one of annihilation. By the summer of 1945, Japan was isolated, starving, and nearly defenseless. Then in August, 2 more bombs fell, atomic ones. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were obliterated, and finally, Japan surrendered. The war was over. But for the people of Tokyo, victory or defeat meant little. Their homes were gone. Their families were gone. Their city, once one of the largest in the world, was a wasteland. In the aftermath, survivors returned to the ruins to rebuild. The smell of smoke lingered for months. Bodies were still being found weeks later. Families dug through the ashes to recover what little remained: a piece of pottery, a charred photograph, a watch frozen at the moment of the explosion. Slowly, tent villages appeared among the rubble. Children played among the ruins, their laughter a fragile echo of life returning. Over time, new buildings rose, wider streets were laid, and Tokyo began its long journey of rebirth. In the years that followed, Japan underwent a transformation. The war was over, but its scars ran deep. The devastation forced the nation to confront the full cost of its militarism. Tokyo became a symbol not only of destruction, but of resilience. By the 1950s, it was once again a thriving metropolis. Yet the memory of that night in 1945 remained etched in the hearts of those who had lived through it. For decades, survivors rarely spoke about it. The pain was too deep, the memories too vivid. Only later, as Japan rebuilt its identity around peace, did stories begin to surface: diaries, sketches, photographs, and the testimonies of the few who had survived the firestorm. Today, modern Tokyo stands as one of the world's most advanced cities, filled with light, energy, and life. But beneath the glass towers and neon signs lies a buried memory, a memory of fire. In the district of Sumida, near the site of the greatest destruction, a memorial hall stands in silence. Each year on March 10th, candles are lit for the victims of the firebombing. Survivors and families gather, some now frail with age, to remember those who were lost. They close their eyes, and in the flickering candlelight, they can still see the night sky glowing red. The firebombing of Tokyo was more than a military operation. It was a human tragedy on an unimaginable scale, a moment when technology turned against humanity, when the line between soldier and civilian disappeared in the smoke. It stunned Japan, shocked the world, and remains one of the darkest chapters of modern warfare. Yet from that devastation came a lesson written in ashes, that peace must be built not on conquest, but on compassion and understanding. As the camera pans over the bright skyline of modern Tokyo, the lights glitter like stars. But if you listen closely, beneath the hum of traffic and the chatter of the city, you can almost hear the echo of that distant night, the sound of engines in the dark, the cries of those who ran, and the whisper of flames that consumed a city and changed the course of history forever.